Here we go again. It's one of those interesting discussions that I've never had a chance to throw my hat in the ring, but it comes for the term JRPG, which if you don't know stands for Japanese RPG or role-playing game. And it specifies Japan, and a lot of people are always in discussion about whether or not this term is a good thing or a bad thing, and they always seem to ask the developers, creators, and producers of various JRPGs, and even these guys have mixed feelings about this. So I want to throw my hat in the ring now and discuss how I feel about JRPGs and that term itself. And personally, I don't really care if people use the term, but I don't usually use it on my channel ever. For me personally, I feel like it's a little bit too general because, like I said, it stands for Japanese RPG. That's what the J in JRPG stands for. And in case you're wondering what is a JRPG, well, it can be any game as long as it's developed in Japan. It's a JRPG. So that means games like Dark Souls are JRPGs. Games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's a JRPG. Octopath Traveler 2, any other Final Fantasy Tactics is another great example. But here's where I have the issue with that term. If I were to describe Dark Souls, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Persona 5 as JRPGs, all of those games are vastly different. So I usually stick with the terms like turn-based RPG or strategy RPG or action RPG to describe these games, because that to me helps someone that might not be familiar with them know exactly or more precisely what to expect from that game. But here's the thing, there's nothing wrong if you say JRPG if you're trying to describe something. It does help specify a little bit more about the game regardless of how concise it is. It's the same thing when somebody says it's a Western RPG. It does give the audience at least a general idea, at least of where it came from, so you can kind of, to a certain extent, know what to expect. However, that is not always the case. Take, for example, the game Undertale. Definitely has a lot of more traditional Japanese, let's say, elements involved in that game, but that is actually a full-blown Western RPG. And that's kind of my issue when I talk about things that are Western RPGs or JRPGs. I don't use those terms because they don't tell me specifically enough information about what game I'm actually playing. Because that's what a WRPG or JRPG or KRPG, Korean RPG, that's what that does for me. That's all it does. It tells me what country the game itself came from or what area of the world did it come from. You know what I'm saying? Because I know a lot of people consider Undertale a JRPG, but if it's developed in the West and it comes from the West and it's created by somebody who lives in the West, I'm sorry, it is not a JRPG, even if it is clearly, and it is, influenced by games like Earthbound, for example. It's still a Western RPG, which is why I don't use these terms on this channel, because at this point, everybody gets inspired off of all sorts of different things and elements and places, that to call them JRPGs or Western RPGs or whatever it may be is fine, and it's not, to me at least, not the biggest of deals. I personally prefer to be a little bit more specific, because at this point, with so many games and so many awesome developers, especially in the indie scene, doing all sorts of cool things to help innovate the genres, I like to be a little bit more specific when I talk about each and every game, because I want people to truly understand what they're getting into. But that's just my take on this subject. Besides, I'm certain 10 years from now, people will still be having this discussion. I don't think JRPG is a big deal personally. I just thought it was interesting and I wanted to give my 2 cents in. But like I said, you're welcome to disagree with me. I do consider games, for example, like Elden Ring, I definitely consider those JRPGs. They're right there with Persona because they're both developed in the country of Japan. I keep it pretty straightforward. But that's just me. And I'd love to know now what you think about all this and what do you consider, like I said, a JRPG. Let me know in the comments down below, guys. And as always, I am Bradley Overrated, out like a trout. Praise be to Yevon from a great JRPG. And I'll see you next time. Take care.